And a very warm welcome to the Crash MotoGP podcast, episode 32, and it's a Christmas special, so Merry Christmas. My name is Harry Benjamin, alongside me, and well, one is suitably dressed with Christmas jumpers, Santa, and a tree to boot. Of course, the legend that is Keith Huewen, but we're both bitterly disappointed if you're watching this in vision, because Crash MotoGP editor Pete McLaren, despite given fair warning, has not turned up with anything Christmassy. Pete, you're clearly not in the Christmas spirit yet, are you?
This is my Christmas spirit. I mean, I just have an alternative T-shirt.
How do we go with that? Bar humbug.
Exactly. I thought Keith's he's brought it all out there.
He has. It looks like a scene for the nativity play behind him.
I was a bit worried when I got this jumper because it says wanted December 25th male. You see, I'm inclusive. It's one of those difficult things, isn't it? When you're expected to dress up and then Pete turns up. The only factor that I will let Pete off with, of course, living in a Buddhist country, they don't tend to celebrate Christmas in the same way that we do. So you're obviously integrating very well, Pete. Is all I could say.
Thank you, Keith. That's kind.
Yeah. Well, I'm very glad that at least Keith's made the effort for a change. I know we've had a bit of time off, Pete, but come on.
This is as festive as my office ever gets, Harry, I can tell you.
Well, if that's just your office, I'd love to see the rest of your house. I bet it's full-on nativity scene round the corner. Very nice.
You also have to remember that I have 4 children.
Ah, yes. So the spirit is very much not quite dead yet. Well, it's a pleasure to see you both again. And thank you as well all for tuning in to our Christmas special. Before we get into the crux of it, though, Keith, you've been out and about, haven't you? Motorcycle Live's been taking place up in it's the Birmingham NEC, isn't it, in the UK? How's that been?
Pretty much successful, I would say. It's one of those situations where you feel for organisers that are committed to that kind of thing at the time of year. That, EICMA, we had the big Italian show in EICMA over in Italy, obviously, which is a massive show and big launches of new models and stuff like that. That seems to be the show for that kind of thing nowadays. So the British show at the NEC, as you say, which is really easy to get to. I mean, you've got a train station right in an airport right next door. You don't even have to wear a jacket because you can get to everywhere without... unless you go in your car and you've got to walk to get a bus to get in from the car parks, of course. But why go on in your car when you've got all these trains and planes and things that can pull up right by the front door effectively? But talking of Father Christmas, it does feel like there's quite a lot of Santas in there, in that the demographic is unbelievably old. It's a shock. I mean, I fit in brilliantly, as you might imagine. But it is a situation that we have now, isn't it? That the only people that have got money to spend are your old folks, it would seem, at the minute. And it is a very, very grey kind of atmosphere in those places. Of course, there are youngsters there. I mean, racers are there and the like doing their duty. But I think the thing that struck me when I walked in the door and the first wander round that I had was that it is, it's an over 40s type situation at the moment. And I think that's really indicative of where we are in the country regarding kind of money and the like and so on. And the fact that virtually no one was wearing any masks. I mean, pandemic, What bloody pandemic? There doesn't seem to be one in Birmingham, that's for sure. But those are the initial impressions. Some of the new brands that were there were interesting. We've got two-stroke bikes and Langen and stuff like that were interesting. You've got some of the old-fashioned stuff. I mean, one that I absolutely took to was the full Essex Hayabusa. How can you have a motorcycle like a Hayabusa dressed in white with chrome?
I think I saw you tweet that, yeah.
Honestly, I had to rush back and get my ankle chain. I just thought, I've got to have my ankle chain and my medallion on to ride that thing. I mean, the very cheek of it, it was wonderful. But there were lots of other machines there to worth taking a look at. The stage show was good. James Whittam does a great show up on the stage. So you obviously take part in that. Throughout the week, we had the big BSB day on Saturday, the British Superbikes day on Saturday, where everybody took part. And, of course, at last, they did an official Fred Clarke retirement thing as well. The circuit commentator for some 45 years. I mean, Fred, he's never admitted to his age, but Fred Clarke obviously has retired from doing the trackside commentary next year at BSB and other series. But finally, he's rolled over in good health. Looks well, Fred, but I'm really pleased that they made an effort to sort of herald his achievement over the years because, well, anybody, including people my age, first thing you do when you walk into a track is hear Fred Clarke. And to not hear Fred Clarke in 2022 is going to seem really, really strange. I don't know who's going to be taking over. People have said, are you taking over from Fred Clark? No one can take over from Fred Clark. A, there's no one good enough. B, there's no one prepared to make that kind of incredible effort for detail that Fred used to make. So I think that's a bit of a sad tear in the eye to learn that Fred is not officially going to be there anymore for the coming year. Anything else that I noticed at the show? I think that people like Royal Enfield are going big. Now, I don't really understand the concept, I've got to say, of Royal Enfield. It's like new retro. I don't get that myself, but that's just me. I like to see new innovation and all swinging, all dancing, brand new stuff. And of course, what certain manufacturers have gone for is some of this more retro type thing. I mean, there is a massive market for it, and that may well be. It feeds into what I said when I started on this: is that the grey factor. There are a lot of people with money that don't want fast motorbikes because A, they're probably not capable of riding them. Which is a whole new... Harry, I'm rambling again, I know, but I mean, some of these motorbikes, I've raced motorbikes that aren't as fast as the bloody things you can buy for the road nowadays, and they are tricker than trick. Traction control, all the electronics you could need actually for a road bike, because you're more likely to need them on a road bike because of your skill level and the fact that the roads are varying grip and the like. But personally, I mean, 90% of people that buy fast motorbikes aren't capable of riding fast motorbikes, and it's a bone of contention for me in the first place that the reason we have some of the accidents we have on the road is because they're riding something that they're probably not capable of riding at the kind of speeds that the things go in first and second gear. You're already up to your speed limits in 2 gears before you got the other bloody 4 to go. So it's a kind of... It's great to have the show back, and congratulations to the show. Motorcycle Live, I'll go every year, whatever the circumstance. And it was good to see probably the 100,000 people that went there over the week. Plenty of show to see. With a few less people there, it's even better because you get to see everything there is, and roll on next year. May they be successful again.
Yeah, well, it sounded like a really nice time, and good to see those sort of shows coming back as well. It's interesting, actually, you say about the grey factor. It sort of ties into something I wanted to talk about as well a little later on, but I may as well talk about it now. And we've discussed it before. Obviously, it has been confirmed since we last spoke that it's particularly with MotoGP that they will be doing, or they have done for this year, a docu-series, a sort of Drive to Survive version for the two-wheeled world, which I think is going to be on Amazon Prime in multiple regions from next year. Do you think something like that, considering the quite hefty impact it's had in the Formula One world in terms of bringing not just new audiences, but absolutely younger audiences, do you think that will have the same effect for the two-wheeled world as well?
Yes, in short, absolutely it will, because I think that not quite as bad as in Formula One. Formula One with Bernie shut down social media and all the trendy bits and pieces and the way that kids communicate. So I think that Formula One had a much bigger opportunity to expand their footprint and have done so. I mean, this last year has been, and the fact that they're quite lucky in Formula One that they've got some great young drivers. Lando Norris, what's not to like about Lando Norris? He's a Valentino Rossi fan and so on and so forth. He's a great kid. And George Russell goes to Mercedes next year alongside bloody Hamilton. They've got some great youngsters coming through, and that's going to encourage, particularly on these shores, British fans to get more involved. With the bikes, we've always had social media. People have always been involved in social media. And I think that the film side of things will expand that, of course. And I think that Pete will answer this as well, because I know it's a drum he likes to beat regarding the age limits changing as well. I think what it will do is it will encourage parents to not shut down the opportunities for kids. I think that what you do as a parent, quite naturally, is shut down something that you don't think you are going to be capable of either funding or seeing through. And with kids, and obviously the danger factor, is my child mature enough to be racing 100-mile-an-hour motorbike? It's something that we all as parents are a bit careful about. Even when your kid goes out on the road for the first time in an old banger, you worry like mad about their safety. So I think that the age limits for Grand Prix that are changing, that may encourage more parents to perhaps, open that door a little bit wider than they might have done in the past. I'm guessing, because I've got all girls, and thankfully none of them want to go racing motorbikes. because having watched the rapid rate of aging of any friend that I've got that's got kids that are racing, I was thinking Neil Mackenzie. Neil Mackenzie looked 500 when he was only about 30, just because his boys were coming through. I think he's only just recovering now, but the stress levels of having a child in a sport like ours is I would imagine bloody high.
It's interesting, Keith, what you said earlier as well about people riding these enormously fast road bikes. And as you say, the age limit will now change that. If a parent has a situation where their son or daughter says, well, I'm buying one of these road bikes or I'm going racing, the parent might actually think, you know what, it is safer to be on the racetrack. And exactly as you say, so maybe it will change the whole way that people look at motorcycle racing. It'll actually be seen as, that's a safer option, given that you can't prevent teenagers when they get to 16, 17, they can do what they want, can't they? And you'd rather at the end of the day have them in a controlled environment if they are going to have a bike than riding one of these enormously fast road bikes.
That is rather worrying when you mention that phrase, teenagers can do what they want. Yeah, we have that round here every single bloody day, yeah. I can tell you, without any doubt about it. But I think that, getting back to your question originally, Harry, I think the film is good for the sport. There's no doubt about that. It's going to show it in a good light, providing it's not a crash, bang, wallop film, which I doubt it will be, because there are certain controlling factors around that. I think it's going to be great for the sport.
I think it's probably a good time for it as well, actually, because with Rossi sort of now no longer on the grid, the one name that people might have known about is not there to drag people in. So this is a good time for it to be expanding to brand new audiences, I would imagine.
Well, I think in the UK as well, with Michael Laverty's Vision Track MotoGP team and Moto3 team, MotoGP. I'm ahead of the game there, man. Yeah. That'll be next week's announcement, knowing Michael. But the fact being that the Moto3 team, you've got a British team that is there for the ACAST. British team, British and Irish team. I mean, it's always a slight conflict, isn't it, when you start talking about Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Let's call it do we call the British Isles? Is Ireland the British Isles? This is the whole trouble, isn't it, really? But Irish, English, Welsh, Scottish, whatever. Michael Laverty's got the team for you, effectively. If you've got talent, he can move you through his academy, through the lower classes, and then into Moto3, which is the entry level, obviously, for MotoGP, and where everybody wants to go. So I think there's the timing of quite a lot of this stuff, Harry, at the moment is really good.
It's all looking really positive and encouraging for next year. But I suppose, considering this is our last show for 2021, I thought it would be the perfect time to run down all of the teams and riders and just have a little look back at their season. And for some, it was their last ever. For some, just their first, and perhaps ones to remember and also perhaps ones to very much forget for some riders. I'd like to start. I'm going to go through the Constructors' Championship, but backwards. So I'd like to start with Aprilia. If I may. A year, I suppose, full of positives in which to build on. Keith, Aleix Espargaro's fantastic podium in Silverstone, and of course the signing of Maverick Vinales, who looked like he was really getting up to speed more and more towards the end of this season.
Concerns for me, they had concessions this year. So they're going as good as they could possibly go by the end of the year. They had concessions so they could make changes. They will have them again next year, but the log jam of development for all the other teams is removed come 2022. I say that, and then I'm going to contradict myself straight away. And yet Yamaha turn up at the tests at the end of this year with nothing, absolutely nothing of any real use. Fabio Quartararo, said the bike is no different. There's nothing they've improved. So, there's me been banging this massive drum about next year, 2022, really looking forward to all these innovations that are going to be coming and all the changes that are going to be technically and within the rules, obviously. It's a case of who's moved everything forward. And yet it looks like Yamaha haven't moved anything at the moment, unless it's so behind in their production of these trick bits and the like. I mean, the rules haven't changed. So they've still got to work within the rules, which are quite tight anyway. But normally, we see it every week with bloody Ducati bring something, don't they? That's slightly trick or whatever it might be. So it is going to be very, very interesting next year. Getting back to where we are with Aprilia at the moment, I think might get left behind a bit next year. I just do.
I think obviously the podium at Silverstone, that was the highlight, wasn't it? If you're going to, one single moment, it's pretty obvious there. I think the low point of this year, probably the last few races, wasn't it? The form it seemed like they struggled in the cooler temperatures, and that caught them a bit off guard because they'd had a bike that actually was fairly consistent all year. It was top 8, top 6, and as we saw, capable of even podiums for most of the year. And then it dropped away again, and that's going to be a concern because to make that next step, which is what Vinales will be expecting as well, you need a bike that's going to work throughout the full season. So they need to get on top of that. As Keith says, they'll be the only manufacturer with concessions. So they have a bit more breathing room than Yamaha, who the clock is ticking, as Keith said. They've got the 2 tests to come early next year, and then that's it. You're going racing with the engine, whatever you've got. Aprilia, they don't quite have the gun to their head in that way, in that they can still develop their engine during next year. But I think some people might be surprised that, in a way, Vinales, what was it? I think Aleix beat Vinales in all 5 races. So I think Aleix actually impressed some people. I think people thought, give Vinales a few races. And remember, he had a couple of tests as well. And he would actually be ahead of Aleix. People weren't sure, were they, exactly because we had Savadori, who was a rookie alongside him. And I think Aleix, impressed with his level this year. And I think that Maverick, he still needs to get comfortable with that bike. And that's Aprilia's mission during this winter. That's what they need to do, because we all know what Maverick can do. I mean, the guy won the first race and he's there on the podium again at Assen just before the split with Yamaha. So I
can't see the patience lasting very long, Pete, when it comes to Maverick Vinales. I mean, I think that Aprilia neither have the money or the time to be messing around with somebody's head if it drops. I just can't. I'd sing the song, I Feel Trouble Ahead. It's one of those, isn't it?
I mean, this other thing is, of course, are we going to see riders signing before even the first race of next year? I mean, it's a contract year. We've seen it previously that the deals have been done in January, haven't they? So, I mean, I'd be surprised, actually, if there's not one top rider, at least, that signs before the first race. And so you've got, as you say, guys like Vinales, if he's not happy, he needs to find somewhere pretty quick, and he's going to have to impress. Even if he's not happy, he needs to do enough to get himself in a team. Suzuki, you would imagine he's thinking, I went quite well there before. There's going to be a lot to play for from the very first test, not just for this season, but for the season after.
Well, I think we'll touch a bit more on Maverick when we get to the Yamaha as well, because he certainly provided us a lot of talking points for this season. I think a word to Pete briefly on the young Lorenzo Savadori as well, who had to sadly make way for Maverick. He remains a part of the team, test and wildcard rider, so he's still very much a part of that. But a shame he had to make way, but that was sort of written on the cards, really. If Vinales becomes available, who's the one that's going to leave? It's going to be Savadori.
Yeah, that's it. And he had that nasty incident where he hit Pedrosa's bike, didn't he, in Austria, and he had the ankle injury, and that sort of he forced to withdraw from Silverstone, and then Vinales came in. So, but as you say, I think he just needs more time, doesn't he? And he's going to get that now, because he'll be doing wildcard races again and test riding, and Aprilia, as part of the concessions, they can do more testing. So, I think that it's the right environment for him, but he's not a young guy as such. I think he's getting towards 27, 28 now. So now's the time where he needs to show that he can be a full-time MotoGP rider, and again, put himself in the window for 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Aprilia ended 6th in the constructors, 9th in the teams, as we said, a podium. Best results in Silverstone with 3rd with Aleix, Savadori 26th, Vinales 10th, and Espargaro 8th in the drivers' standings at the end of it. Let's move on to KTM, who were 5th in the constructors. Tech 3, though. Let's start with them, Tech 3.